Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be creating a script to populate the database that we created previously. So, okay, cool. We're going to think that we already have a lot of people registered on our application, which means that our database already has data. So, we're going to put that data using a script, a bash script. So if you take a look to the people.txt file that I will leave you, this is a random file that contains a lot of names and last names. I just found this on internet like random names generator, hit enter, and then you're gonna find this file. Or you're gonna generate these files with a click. So I'm just gonna leave this file for you. It has like 50 names and last names in here. So we're gonna use this for this video. Cool. So the first thing that we need to do is that remember that this is the file that contains the fake information for the users. So let's go ahead and create a new script like put.sh. Oh, by the way, remember that in this case I am in the Jenkins Ansible folder because we're going to be working with Ansible stuff and we want to make this isolated from the rest of things. So let's go ahead and create your put.sh script, and normally we start with /bin/bash, which is going to be cool. And now we're going to start putting a lot of logic in here because we want a strong script. So let's define a counter because we want to insert 50 records to our DB for now. So we're going to do a while because we want to do that 50 times. And then we're going to do something like counter, which is the variable that we define up here in this part, while counter is lesser than 50 because we want to insert 50 names. We want to zoom 1. I mean, for example, 0 plus 1 is going to become 1. Then it's going to become 2, then it's going to become 3 on every single iteration. So that number is going to become the ID for every single person. We're going to see this later, but for now, let's do like counter, which is the variable that we're defining here. We're defining it again, but now we're going to zoom 1. So we're going to say counter plus 1. So in this case, counter is going to become 1 because we're telling 0 plus 1, then counter is going to become 1. Then it's going to become 2 because 1 plus 1 is going to be 2, so on and so forth. Pretty nice. So okay, now we want to start defining some variables like, for example, the name and the last name for people. So how are we going to populate this information using the people.txt file that I will leave you? So this is what we're going to be doing here. So let's save this file for now. And we're going to look the people file that I will leave you. Cool. So if you can see the structure of this file, we have the name, comma, and the last name. The same structure applies for all the names. Now, there is a cool command in Linux, which is the nl command, and if you pass nl and then the name of the file, you are going to be finding the number of the line to that specific name. So for example, now line number 1, this is the name, line number 2, line number 3, so on and so forth. So having this information, we want this number to become the ID for that person, right? So for example, Denise is going to have the ID number 1. Therese is going to have the ID number 2. Cool, right? So we're going to be using this nl command to get the IDs. Now, the second thing that we want to do is that, for example, to get a specific name, we want to grep for the ID because we don't know the name. So, for example, let's say I want to get the person who has a name of ID 2. So I will do something like grep-w and then I say 2, and then I will have the name. If I want the person with ID number 10, then I just pass that and you are going to see that bash is always going to return the name for that person, which is going to be pretty cool. So let's work with the person of the ID number 1 in this case, which is Denise. Cool. So after, we want to split the name and the last name. As you see here, we have one column for the ID and another column for the name and last name. So in Linux we have a command which is awk, and this allows us to print specific columns. So for example, this is the column number 1 because this is the ID, and this is the column number 2. So for example, if I do something like a print 1, it's going to print the column number 1. But if I do a print number 2, it's going to print the column number 2. So column number 1 means the ID, and column number 2 means the name and last name. So we're going to be using this, the column number 2, and then we can retrieve the name and the last name. So finally, we want to get either the name or the last name. So how do we split that using that comma? So that's going to be pretty cool. We can use, for example, the awk command again, and we can pass -f, which allows us to split using a delimiter. So we're going to be passing the delimiter as the comma, and then we're going to do exactly the same print that we did before. So what's going to happen here is that awk, it's going to split this in 2 columns. It's going to say this is going to be the first column from the comma, and this is going to be the second column from the comma. This is what we're saying here with this comma. So we say please make 2 columns from this string, and column number 1 is going to be the name, column number 2 is going to be the last name. So if I do a print for the column number 1, you're going to see the name. And if I do a print for the number 2, you're going to see the last name. Pretty nice. So we're going to copy this because this is going to be the name of the person. Because for example, if I want to know the name of the person which has, for example, an ID of 30, that's the name. Or that's the last name actually, because we're printing the column number 2. If we print number 1, we're going to have the name. So if we want to know the name for the person 39, we're going to have that name. So this is cool. Let's copy this and let's modify our PUD script. So the name for this is going to be the execution of this command, but remember that in here we need to use the counter, because in this iteration counter is going to be number 1. So it means the person with ID of 1. So we want to do something like counter in here, which is going to be cool. So in the iteration number 2, then counter is going to become 2, and then we're going to have the person with the number 2 in here, right? So we're going to copy exactly the same thing in here, but remember that in order to get the last name, we need to print the second column. So first column is going to be the name, and second column is going to be the last name. So this is cool. We have already captured the name and the last name from the people.txt file. I'll see you in the next lesson.